So the M42 Wireless has finally been released and I've been very excited to try it out. If you have been following my channel for a while, you must know that I was a massive fan of the wired M42. So let's check out my thoughts on the wireless one and if it actually can be my new main mouse.
The build itself is very solid as there is no side flex and no flex on the top side. Screwing in the changeable hump makes it so that I can't create any movement or flex even when I'm really trying. There is slight creaking at times when I really push the sides, but this does not happen consistently and it doesn't happen in real use. Overall, the build on my unit is quite tanky. Looking at the overall quality, my left mouse button feels very good as it's very snappy and tactile and still easy to actuate. This is a click that's extremely good for gaming and very good for overall use as well. Sadly, the right mouse button has quite a bit of pre-travel and it makes it harder to spam and it feels quite cheap as well. The actuation is also heavier and more crispy than on my left click, which I of course do not like, but the issue is not on the button design but the switch itself, and issues like these can sadly happen. This is of course something that's only specific to my unit, and with FPS games I do not really mind it that much, but if I would play MOBA games that have a lot of right click spamming, this unit would be pretty much unusable for me. The side buttons have a limited amount of pre-travel and some post-travel when you use a lot of force, and the actuation is somewhat tactile, but these are not really the best feeling side buttons I've tried. The side button placement then again is very good for my hand size and grip style. And the scroll wheel requires a medium amount of force and the steps are somewhat defined. I myself would want more tactility with the steps, but this is good enough for gaming and overall use. Talking about the feel of the mouse, the M42 Wireless still has holes, and these are the same circular holes that we've seen on previous Xtrfy mice. These do not bother me, but I would still want to see a shell without holes from Xtrfy. The weight on my scale is 69 grams and it is heavier than the wired M42, but it does not feel heavy by any means. Still again, something below 60 grams would of course not hurt, and that should be fairly easy for Xtrfy to achieve if they remove the RGB and use a smaller battery. And with those improvements, they can also remove the holes and use a good coating like on the Superlight for example. The M42 Wireless still has the weight balancing system that the M4 Wireless also had,
which is mostly a gimmick in my opinion.
And at 69 grams the mouse will feel well balanced, but of course not as lightweight as the Superlight or the V2 Pro. The mouse is still using the 3370 from Pixart and the implementation from Xtrfy is very good. The motion latency is very low, the polling rate is stable, and there is no abnormal DPI deviation. The click latency is also very good and I do recommend for you to use the 2 millisecond option.
It does not of course quite stand up to the Razer Viper V2 Pro or the Logitech G Pro X Superlight, but you won't notice any performance difference in game. In combination with the low click latency and the light actuation, at least on my left click, the clicks will feel very responsive.
Xtrfy mice do not have any drivers, but you can control a lot of things just from the mouse. For example, the RGB modes, the RGB brightness, lift of distance, click latency as I already mentioned, and of course polling rate and CPI and even RGB speed with some modes. For the battery life, it is surprisingly good for this amount of RGB, as it does last for about 2 weeks with my heavy use. To achieve this, I of course run the mouse with the dimmest RGB brightness. The mouse feet on the M42 Wireless are now much improved. The experience is a lot smoother than it was with the M4 Wireless. The glide is now good on smooth and rough surfaces, so you do not necessarily need to get aftermarket feet if you have a rough pad. Even the Artisan Hayato Ocho version 2 felt too rough on my M4 Wireless, but not at all with the M42. But the feet still are not as good as for example on the Viper V2 Pro that was just released. Considering the price and how good the bang for buck on the Xtrfy M42 Wireless is, well, for 100 bucks I will say that it's quite a good deal in my opinion. In Finland at the time of recording this video you can even get the mouse for 90 euros, which is very good.
It's not the best value that you can get for your money, but it's still very high up.
Then we get to the most important thing in gaming mice, and that is of course the shape, and this is something that's so good with the M42. The main thing with the shape is that it's quite thin and somewhat short. The sides are nicely curved, but it's not like the mouse gets wide towards the front or the back. So whichever hump you use, the mouse is quite thin from the back and easy to control with your palm. With the more flat profile hump, the mouse reminds you quite a bit of the Ultralight 2, but the back of the mouse is a little bit wider and the mouse is of course longer as well. It actually feels quite a lot like the Starlight Valve medium, but the shape just feels a little bit more well designed and finalized for me. The Pony Symmetrical Chew or the Razor Viper Mini also have some similarities with this, as the length is pretty much the same on these mice and they are both very thin, but the back of the mouse and the hump feel very different. With the higher profile hump you can get some CA13 vibes from Zowie, but it's quite a reach as the CA13 is just way higher profile and there is way more palm contact with that. The back of the mouse reminds you quite a lot like the Addice, but the M42 is longer and it does not flare out to the front quite as much. I enjoy all of these shapes and especially the CA13 and the Starlight Valve Small. Okay, and let's not forget the Razor Viper Mini or the Pony Symmetrical Chew shape, but even more so I enjoy the M42.
It is near perfect for me with my 19x10cm hands and claw grip, and I actually can't even tell what I would like to change from the shape to make it better. With all the others there is some small adjustment I would like to make to improve my experience with the mouse. Well, actually not that much with the Razor Viper Mini or the Pony Symmetrical Chew shape. It is very good for me, and as the Symmetrical Chew is a little bit larger than the original, I think it's a little bit better shape for me than the Razor Viper Mini. Oh, and of course one mouse that I forgot to mention that can remind you quite a bit of the M42 is the Zowie FK2. With the flat hump the M42 can kind of be considered an FK3 that's a little bit higher profile. But overall, because of the changeable top shell, the mouse is very good for any kind of claw grip. Just with the lower profile hump it already works very well with any kind of claw, but the more pronounced back shell might be more comfortable for you if you aggressive claw and you want some more palm contact. Talking about in-game performance and aim, I do not believe that the mouse can make you better or worse long term, but the M42 is one of these mice that I can just pick up and perform very well just instantly. I've got good mobility and control with it, meaning that it works for all kinds of games, and both tracking and flick shots feel very natural with it. I was already a massive fan of the M42 Wired, even though it did not have the best cable, it had holes and the feet were not the best around. And with this implementation I'm going to be a massive fan of the M42 Wireless as well. Of course it's not perfect, as if we only think about the performance, quality and feel, the Razor Viper V2 Pro and the Superlight will go above it. However, the only real issue with my unit is the pre-travel on the right click, but again I would like to see Xtrfy ditch the RGB, which then again would mean that they can use a smaller battery and the weight would be lower. And the weight won't make a massive difference for me, but as it will just come by removing the RGB pretty much, I think they should definitely do it. And also let's remove all these holes, have a good coating and sell the mouse for about 90 to 100 euros and it would be an absolute banger. But even in this state and mainly because of the shape, it's going to be my new main. That's pretty much it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you enjoy my content, hit that subscribe button and see you in the next one.